So Peter, this is the sixth one of these interviews I've done over the last couple of years, but this is the first time I've actually known the person in the other chair. But equally, it's the first time that the person in the chair has tweeted his mum just before and said, "Get on the live stream." So you can say hello, Mum, if you wish.
Yeah, hi, Mum.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do that for a talk, and now finally.
Just need a little sign, says there. Peter, maybe not everyone knows who you are here, so just introduce yourself for everybody.
Okay, so my name is Peter Steinberger. I'm from Austria. I grew up in some small place that probably nobody knows. We had a farm. So I moved to Vienna when I was 18. I studied computer science. And eventually I started my own business.
And that business was doing?
So it's always weird how to explain it. Probably every single one of you has a copy of us on our phone. We sell an SDK that shows PDF. And you can annotate it, you can like fill forms, you can digitally sign it, anything, and we license that to other large companies, usually like companies like Dropbox or Atlassian or Lufthansa, even governments, banks, like those kind of companies.
Come on. Product marketing, got to name it. Got to name the SDK.
Yeah, so the name is PS PDF Kit, and it's available. We started on iOS, and eventually we moved to Android. Then we did web, then we did Windows, and now, I know everybody will hate me, we also do Electron. But you got to serve what people request.
There was audible mumblings. You could hear it, especially from this part of the room.
Yeah.
There's obviously some here. So PS PDF Kit, I mean, us old guys will get totally why it's called PS PDF Kit, but maybe...
Yeah, the name, I'll get to the backstory in a little bit, but I didn't really consider that this would ever get so big, so I didn't think much about the name, right? It's Objective-C, you don't have a namespace, so you need to prefix your classes, and I figured if I use PDF, that's a little bit too generic, and my name is Peter Steinberger, so it's the PS, and I figured 5 letters would be more than enough for anything, so that's how PS PDF Kit came to be, and still today we have like companies who like struggle to like type it, and I think even we had a lot of mistypes, but it is what it is, and actually it's a good brand now.
It is. So when it's Megacorp Global, 20,000 employees, your name will never go away.
Yeah,
it's with you forever. In these interviews, I normally ask people just to explain who they are and where they're at now, but because of the title of this talk and the way we're going of your transition, I think I'm just going to ask you, give us your backstory. Now, I'm going to leave it up to you how far we go back. If you want to start at birth, that's fine. Just remember we only have 40 minutes, but go back as far as you like and just bring us up to today, because I think the story is where lots of the value is in how we get places. Absolutely. We learn lots through stories.
So the current company was actually not my first project that I thought was a success. I went to Vienna, and then I always worked at a company on the side, so gonna make money to like finance my studies. So I did Windows software on the side, good old MFC. Almost turned me away from programming completely because it's such a terrible framework. But eventually I pushed the company to adopt .NET, and then I wrote C#, and it was really much nicer. And then I eventually did Rails, and at some point my coworkers were talking about the iPhone and how amazing it is, and I was like, I have my Sony Ericsson, like the Walkman handy, and it had animations and was amazing. I was like, why would I ever need something else? It has Opera Mini, it's perfect. And then I played with the iPhone, and then 5 minutes later I bought one. So that the magic really worked on me. But that was the first part of the story, and then I still did web software at the time, Windows and web. And a lot of websites really sucked in the beginning. Safari was slow. The web was by far not as far. It was pre-iOS 3. There was no copy-paste. So there was like a moment where I was like writing a long message. I drew through a tunnel, and the button disabled itself, and then I got an error message that my internet connection is gone. And I couldn't get the text out, and I couldn't re-enable the button, and I was just furious about it because it was an emotional message. And so I was on my way home. So I went home, turned on my computer, and I was like, screw that, I'll just write an app. So I was like, Googled how to make an app, and then I downloaded Xcode. I opened it, and eventually this text editor window appeared, and I was waiting for the IDE to load. And after like a minute or two, I realized that's kind of it. That's Xcode 3. Okay, I got a text editor now. I was used to Visual Studio and ReSharper and like all the amazing things that we had 10 years ago. And then I had this text editor, and I was like, okay, if that's what it is, I'll just do that. And so I wanted to build an amazing app, so I needed a database. Of course, I used Core Data. 320 was all the rage, so I downloaded 320 and used all the weird patterns that I've seen. There was like TT release, the first step I wrote called release and then nil every time you deallocated something. So you could be very sure that if you call release again, it's already nil. So it's like one less reason for crashing. And I thought actually this is a good idea because it was promoted in that framework. And then, yeah, I did not understand interface builder. I still don't. Dirty secret. I just now learned all the layouts, so at least something. And yeah, like a month later, eventually, my experiment started to become an app, and it was a fun project on the side. And then I figured, okay, that's good enough. I'll just submit it to the App Store. Like I did everything myself. I made a crappy icon. I wrote some text, and I pushed it online. And you know, it was like for a dating service, so there was no API. I used like regular expressions, and I was really smart back then, and it downloaded the plist file from my website with updated regular expressions, so I could like better parse HTML. And I know you should never parse HTML with regular expressions, but back then I did not know any better. There wasn't even regular expressions in the system. You had to use like regexkit lite, like an extension. It was that early. And yeah, and then on December 17, I got an email that the app was approved, and I was like, I did not expect that. Like I didn't think if Apple would actually allow that. And yeah, then it actually like it jumped up in sales, and it was actually a success for the days back then. I made around 50K over the course of a few months, which was like, I was a student. It was like, holy fuck, what am I doing with all the money? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna quit my job.
I was a man of moderation then.
Yeah, I was like, I opened my own hotel. I went to my boss and said, hey, this is like so much fun. I want to focus on that, and I want to stop working here. And basically, everyone was mocking me, like not in a really bad way, but more like, you know, that's a fad. Like, how can you believe you actually make money with apps? And this is like a one-time thing, and I should be smarter. And so secret goal, I hope nobody there's watching, is like finally make more money than the company I worked for. I'm almost there. But yeah, so I quit my job. That took a while. Like I gave them 2 months. It was nice, and then eventually I worked more in it, and it was a ton of fun. Like I learned so many things, like all the mistakes I did in Core Data. Yeah, basically, like while building the app, I learned both how to program and also how to market it. And then basically, with every update, I increased the price. I was like, oh, it's €1, it's €2, it's €3, it's €4, it's €5, and people still bought it, right? And I was like, there was this one moment where I was in the club, and then I was seeing someone using my app. And I was like so proud. I was like almost wanted to tap him on the shoulder and said, I made this. And then I realized this would probably be like really, really weird. So I didn't do it. But that was, and then in May, at 3 in the morning at a party, I was quite drunk. My phone rang. It was like a +1 number. And I was like, who the hell is that? Like I picked it up, and then it's like, like a deep voice. Hello, this is John from Apple. We have a problem with your application. And then for the next 10 minutes, he explained to me why they had to remove it from sale. Because it was a dating app, and the service I used was not really, well, they had their own classification, but it was not really what Apple believed was App Store safe. So they purged it from sale, and that was, at that moment, I was just a few weeks away from DubDub, from my first WWDC, 2010. And then Apple told me, oh yeah, we just removed your app, my sole source of income. So yeah, that was quite a blow. And then I was a little bit grumpy when I went to my first DubDub. It was still super exciting, but I was like, what am I doing now? Like, okay, I didn't really think this through. I can't really go back to my old job. They were all mocking me. So okay, let's try out this freelancing. So I already had a little bit of a track record as I shipped an app, and app developers were in demand. So I started doing freelance, and of course, that was like way too cheap in the beginning, but I made my first step, and then I went to a mobile carrier, and actually it was a lot of fun, and I built, as the only person on the iOS team, I built like their TV client and their info client, and like the app where you could like browse all the services and get your contract details and all those things, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then I got lucky again. Actually, not lucky, because back then you could just like, DubDub was announced, you could just buy a ticket. There was no lottery yet, right? There was like multiple days where you could think about it. So I was like, yeah, this is good. I like it. I want to go to San Francisco again. And it's kind of like Silicon Valley. So I was there, and 2 a.m. in the morning, I was talking to a few people, and I basically got a job offer to work at a San Francisco startup. And I wasn't sure if they were serious. So then they actually wrote me an email. Oh yeah, I should just drop by the next day, like casually, to talk about it. And that casual drop by was like in 7-hour interview marathon. The question I got was, re-implement NS auto release pool.
Oh, I hate those interviews.
Yeah. I like the later stage revenge is when we interview people, we sometimes ask them to re-implement NS undo manager. You know, you have to pass it forward. But I passed it, and then I got the job. And then I knew instantly I have to take the job, right? Well, what am I doing in Vienna? It's like everything's happening in San Francisco. I have to go to San Francisco. So back then I was in a relationship, so that was a little bit hard, because it's like, okay, we are together until I go to San Francisco, because I just have to go there, because I have to go there, right? There was no questioning in my thinking. And we thought this would be easy. The visa would not be a problem. They told me, yeah, that's fine. It will take a month. And we realized actually that the bachelor that I had, like the Europe bachelor, is not equivalent to the US bachelor, because we have 3 years and they have 4 years. So what I had to do is like prove 3 years of work. But when you jump from job to job within 4 weeks periods as a freelancer, that is actually really, really hard. So it took me a while to collect all the things, and then the H-1B lottery, we were not lucky, so we had to try a second way to get the visa, and ultimately it took 9 months to get me there. The crux was, though, that once I had this job offer, I stopped doing freelance work, because of course, like, I cannot take on any project if I'm moving over and work there. So as it took longer and longer, eventually I got bored. I was like, I did open source. I did a lot of open source because I liked it, and it's such a great place to learn. But eventually it was like, okay. And then a friend asked me that he was building a magazine app. And he discovered that rendering PDF fast is actually hard. You know, back then we had the iPad 1, and if you were really lucky, you got 64 megabytes of RAM. Usually the system killed your app before that. So when you invoke rendering, it already takes 40 megabytes. You have to be really careful to not crash, and like it's actually really hard to make that fast. I spent a lot of time on a previous project with a freelancer to make that well. So he figured out that it's hard and asked me, hey, can I not have that part? I was like, sure, I can sell you that. I'll refactor it. So I ripped it out, changed the prefix, so that's what PSPDF came to be, and just sold it to him. And then I figured, if he needs it, maybe other people need it too. So what I did is I bootstrapped this thing. I was like, okay, let's just try it. I used a WordPress template. Like I mutilated it. I just copy-pasted the HTML. I changed the text. I used a static GitHub page, and I just put it online. And I was like, yeah, all these websites have like 3 options, but I'm just selling the source code. So what do I actually do? Okay, I sell the binary, I sell the source code, and then I sell the source code with extra support or whatever. Who cares? Let's just try it, right? So then I still needed a way to make payments. So I Googled around, and Twitter was always an immense source of knowledge. So I just like tweeted, hey, what do people use for payments? And like somebody replied, use FastSpring. So I was like, okay, I use FastSpring because it's just an experiment. I don't really care. It's like, let's just try it. So I signed up there. I integrated it. It took another half a day. And then I had the website. I had the product. I just tweeted it. It's like, hey, I'm selling this thing now. And to be fair, I had friends who were also selling components. So my business partner, Martin Schurer, he sold Superpin, which was like a clustering framework for maps. And then I know another person who did a few smaller things. So I knew that this is not completely out of this world, this idea that you can sell a component. So I tweeted it, and people bought it. Like I think I sold like 2 copies in the first week. I mean, it was not expensive at all. I don't know what I charged, $200, something like that. And of course, emails came in, like, oh yeah, this is fine, but you don't have search. It's like, what the fuck? Like, you don't have outline, you don't do text selection. Like, people were like, suddenly like, there was this influx of things that they wanted from me, and I actually made money with it, and it was like interesting. It was an interesting problem. So I just kept working on it, and I didn't do 40 hours, I more like did all my time, right? 80 hours or whatever. It was like incredibly fun to build, and then I grew it, and I added features and features, and suddenly I learned like how I don't want to say the word fucked up, but how fucked up PDF actually is.
Just say it, it's fine.
Yeah.
They can live edit the stream.
There's no nice way to say it. There's just like, it's a lot of legacy technology, and there's a lot of ways you can do things. Like, getting text out alone took me months. Like, this is not Unicode. This was way before Unicode. There's like 3 types of fonts, and one font can actually be a PDF, and then there's like a translation table, and you need another translation table, and you need to embed 10 megabytes of other translation tables. You cross-reference them, and eventually you get something that could be Unicode, but there's actually no words. There's only single absolute placed letters in a coordinate system, which is not like the Coco coordinate system, but like flipped, but could also be rotated and flipped. And then you have to like figure out what could actually be a word, and what could be a sentence, and what could be a text block. And oh yeah, that took a long time. And it was a long road to like get there, but it was a fun challenge, right? I like challenges, so I kept working on it, and it got better and better. And eventually, I realized, hey, I have a business. Like, this is making money. Like, people like it. People depend on it because they built it in the product. And then I moved to San Francisco because I was still in the whole process of like being in that visa process that was just taking forever and forever and forever. So I gave up my relationship. I sold all my things in my place. I was like sitting there with the cat and a few things that were left over, basically, because I was like ready to move over. So I could not just say, actually, I don't want to move. Like, I really wanted to move, but I also wanted to do that. So I moved to San Francisco, and startups are not exactly jobs where you work 8 hours. So there was a little bit of a problem, because I was like working 10 or more hours there, and then I was also working a lot of the hours on my own thing, like at night and on the weekends. And eventually, you also need sleep. So I did this, and it was really exciting to be there. Like, it was a really cool startup. I learned a lot, and I got an interesting project there, but I also had my own thing, and I was struggling to know, like, I didn't know what to do. Like, I just tried to do both. And then a few months in, my manager was a really nice lady, ex-Palm, and she came to me and looked at me and said, "Peter, is everything okay? You don't look so good." Because I just, like when you don't sleep enough, eventually your shade of eyes turns a little bit darker every day. So I basically explained her the story, and they were really nice about it. They gave me a week off to think it through and decide what I want to do. But I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to continue working on my business. I don't even want to say startup, because I made money kind of since day one. So I said, yeah, I will continue work on my product, which meant I had to leave the US within a week, because that's how the visa laws work. So I had 1 week to sell my stuff. Luckily, I didn't have any time to buy stuff in the first place. So I think I managed to get a couch, and then I sold the couch, and I had like a mattress. Yeah.
You're Steve Jobs-esque.
I was a little bit more. I also had a Brita water filter. But
a well-equipped man.
I know. When you basically live at work and then you only sleep there, what do you really need? So, yeah, I struggled to sold my stuff, and then I moved back and really focused on, well, getting my life back in order, because I was very close on actually burning out. Like, it was a really not that of a fun time, and really working on my company and like getting version 2 up to speed and like adding annotations, and like I had this like long list. I don't know, like 8 years later, I still have this long list of things that we want to build, and then I kept iterating on it, and eventually now, many years later, we're almost 40 people.
That's quite a big jump. You've just come back from San Francisco with your Brita water filter, and this, working on version 2, and then your story suddenly goes, and now we're 40 people. I'm sure something happened in between. Or did you just like collect people and you've got them locked in a cupboard and you...
So I kept working on it, and then, I mean, I realized that much earlier, but it's really a hard step from I'm just building that on my own to, holy fuck, there's so much work to do, I really need help. And then also like, okay, suddenly I need people. I don't know, I never learned that. I didn't went to business school. I never hired someone. So what did I do? I asked on Twitter, hey, I'm looking for help. And then like, one of the first people was actually Matej. He's still at my company, and he's like, yeah, like he's doing freelance work. So, and he's like 2 days a week still like time. So I gave him a task, and then I saw his commits rolling in, and it was like, well, that's nice. Like, I don't have to do everything by myself. And he was not in Austria. When I started this whole thing, I realized that it will be really hard to find people that exactly can do what I need, right? And I was not in a situation, like I didn't want an office, I didn't want to train someone, I just needed someone who knows, and hopefully knows more than I do to help me build it. So it was very natural that I just looked for people and didn't really care where they are. The only important thing was that, okay, maybe not Australia, because the time zone is like very different, and it makes things not easier, but anything around UTC is fine. So that's also where it took many years until I had the first person in Vienna, actually. Like it just came very natural to me that I hired people wherever they are, like based on skill and okay, you find this interesting, I want to work with you, and not, oh, you have to be there, or we need to relocate to San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get on to lots of questions about that type of thing. I just want to just ask you a few questions more about the business and going. I think when I first met you, I think it was 2011, you'd done a lightning talk at a NS conference called How to Sell
Frameworks. And that was my first ever talk.
Yeah, and you were there and you were just saying, yeah, I've written this framework and I sell it for $600. And everyone went...
It already went more expensive there.
Yeah, everyone was going, is this guy mad? Thinking he can make a living selling frameworks to developers? I mean, we all know developers are as tight as they come. But isn't it? And so that raised the question to me is, did you always believe that this was a product that could sell and had a future, or was it more from the fact that I'm making this stuff and people are buying it, why do I care?
In the beginning, it was absolutely an experiment. Like I knew a few things. I knew that other people were successful selling components, like not so much in the iOS world, but also back from my Windows days, I knew that there were actual companies selling frameworks. And not just my friends who do this on the side, but I knew that, yes, this could be a business. Not on iOS, but at least on Windows.
Yeah, I mean, when I came to the Mac world in 2006, I come from Windows, and in the tools market in Windows with grids and table views and whatever was enormous. And one of the things I noticed when I came to Mac was there was virtually nothing. So, yes, you knew people were selling frameworks around, but actually in the market you were trying to do it, and you were fairly an early person doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't not know if that thing would succeed, but I also was in this situation. That's why I went so far back on my backstory that it didn't really matter. Like I had a job that I was really looking forward to, and I just did this because it was fun. Because it was an experiment, and I wanted to see if this would be successful, and there was a lot that I could learn, so I just rolled with it.
So I'm interested to know now, I mean, so when it was back then, you just said you were rolling with it. Someone bought it. You said, oh, wow, oh, wait a minute, now there's this big list of bugs. Now I better get somebody because the big list of bugs or the list of features is too big. And then you probably said, the list has got even bigger, I better get someone else. And then suddenly you're 40 people. But a 40-person company is very different to a one person with a Brita water filter setup. I should imagine it's a little more expensive to run than the water filter. But do you still have the philosophy of let's see what's happening, or do you find now you're having to think, we've got the 10-year roadmap, and has there been a transition, or is it just you found this has worked, we just keep with it?
If anybody tells you in the tech industry that they have a 10-year roadmap, I think that's a lie. Like things are moving so fast that you can look out at a year or maybe a few years, but holy moly, what 10 years? It's like 10 years ago the iPhone came out. Like, who knows where we are in 10 years? But yes, the way I see the business now is very different to how I approached it back then. There is people that rely on me with families. Of course, I'm interested in making sure we have a stable business. I brought on business partners where I could learn a lot from how to restructure the things to make it more sustainable and make it easier to grow. And yes, also I get to code much less because there's just a lot of other things you need to take care of when you have a company.
So, what does your day, because then you were saying you were just working this and doing that, so what does your day sort of look like now a little bit?
A lot.
Or maybe your week, because a day is maybe too long, yeah.
I spend a lot of time on emails, in various forms, like reading through the whole sales process. I think that's extremely useful to know what do people actually do with our product. This is really important to know because it tells me where should we go next, where are the pain points, reading through all of support, or at least almost all of support, which is a ton. understanding, okay, where are we lacking? I mean, some things we know, and some things it's just like you're constantly like get updates on what to do next. And then since we are still, obviously we're still a small company, like making sure that the people who license our technology get a great experience, and that everybody has their little bit of unique use case, and then it's over 1 million lines of code, and the API is immense, so you will find bugs. I mean, it's like no software has no bugs. The important thing is that how you react on it, and how fast can you iterate on it. And I think we play out our strong suit of iterating really fast on it, and then like just like on the next day, here's a nightly, this is fixed. And I still make sure that this is like one of the most important things. So a lot of time is there. Of course, I hop onto call and I talk with people. I look over the short-term roadmap and the long-term roadmap, and I see myself a little bit as a unifier towards our product islands, because we do iOS and Android and web and Windows and Electron, and there's all these wrappers, and there is our shared code base, but what do we expose where and how? And you have this goal of the API should feel like it's made from Apple or from Google, right? It should feel really something that you already know. It should be a very natural extension to all the other system frameworks, yet there should be the same concepts. And that's like often quite hard for like people who only do Android to then also see, okay, we did this on iOS, maybe we should do that way on Android. And I often like went into discussion and say, hey, look at what we did there, and maybe we could do it this way. So I try to unify the products a little bit, not too much. There's like companies who give you the same API on all the platforms, and I mean, it's like you get the same shit API on all the platforms. It's like that's not how it should be. But it's still a challenge to unify it a little bit, that there is common logic.
So we've got loads of questions coming in, and we've got about 10 minutes, so we're gonna quick fire questions. Okay, so your job here is to give really concise answers that change these people's lives in 10 minutes.
No water filter.
No pressure. Yeah. I know. Okay, so sales. How did you handle finding customers back when it was you, and how does that compare to now as a bigger company?
So I was in this lucky position that there were not that many great solutions. There was more than 0 competitors, and we still have competitors. But we had a little bit of a different angle than everybody else. So what we do is user interface first, and then feature second. While the others had like, I don't know, support JavaScript and everything informs right from the start. And we still are not great at that. We are still working on like getting better at our JavaScript implementation, but it's not the thing that matters the most. What matters the most is you get a nice view controller, or you get an activity and you integrate it, and it feels like something Apple would build or Google would give you, and then you can like very easily change it, but more than what Apple would allow you. Like you can like go in really deep and change everything and just make it part of your product. Like when you open the Dropbox app and you open any document, this is our software. Nobody knows, because it looks like the Dropbox app. It's styled like a Dropbox app. It's part of the app. We just deliver the technology and we make it really easy to customize.
Do you go to WWDC each year frightened that your product's about to die?
Yes. Yes.
I can see the sweat beginning.
It's funny. That's funny because every year, like 2012 and forward, I had this angst that eventually Apple will come and just destroy my business, right? 2012, 2013, 2014, and then eventually like that became less and less of a thing, because I realized we have so many features, and it takes such a long time to build up a test suite and get really good at it that nobody can just come in and do that. Like even if you put 100 people on it, it's not like the baby gets born in a day, you know? And then we moved to other platforms, and of course, like, okay, now even if iOS would do something, we still have all the other platforms. And then eventually 2017, Apple released PDF Kit. Yeah, it was a blower. But if I look back at what changed in the business, it's maybe a few percent. They get it to a certain market, but what do you do when there is a bug in the SDK? Like, you have a business critical application, and you load that PDF and it crashes. Do you write a radar? Are you going to wait a year? Hopefully, maybe someone fixes it, or do you like use a vendor that like gives you the fix on the next day? So this is like an immensely large difference. And even if that product would improve, you cannot underrate how important support is.
I know that you have recently, well, a little while ago now, moved from just selling product to subscriptions, which is a popular thing. How's that worked for you?
It worked really well. It certainly is controversial. The old thinking is always you go somewhere, you buy software, and then it's your software, right? Subscriptions, there is a lot of emotions in that word. I know that, like, I follow the App Store discussions on subscriptions, and there's a lot of people that hate it. But when you look at it, like actually look at it, you buy the software. You have a really fast-moving ecosystem where iOS 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like it changes so fast. You buy this snapshot. It's not any useful, like that one alone, and then Apple releases the next OS and it breaks. Like UI kit behaves differently when you link to a new version. It's not even our fault. It will just not longer work well. You need a constant stream of updates, and you also want support. So in the early days, we did sell 12 months. Like you bought it, and then you got a year, and you were covered with updates and support. But then eventually, you had to buy it again because, oh, hey, now iOS 7, everything looks different. Yeah, this needs an immense amount of work to update. So even in the early days, we sold a perpetual license. If you look at it really well, it's actually already a subscription, because after the 12 months, you kind of had to buy it again, because otherwise it will break, and it's not our fault. It's impossible to build software that works 10 years from now on an ecosystem that moves so fast. This is not Windows, right? So Windows is amazing. Like, you can open something from 20 years ago and it still works. Somebody released Windows 3.11 file manager on GitHub and it still runs. I'm amazed that our version 4 still works somehow. So eventually we gave it a name, and we said, no, it's a subscription. You need a subscription. This is why you need it. And to my surprise, most people understood it. Like, I think it's a more honest way of selling it, because previously that was already kind of the truth, but people were not always expecting it. And then they blamed us for UI kit changes or whatever that we were not to blame for. And now it's something, yeah, you use subscription and you're covered as long as you use the product.
We are about to run out of time, and we could carry on for hours, but or I could anyway. So just two more questions. You said right at the beginning you just kept putting up your prices. I know that's a philosophy you've kept going all of these years, and price increase, price increase. I don't think you even put prices on the website anymore now because you don't want to scare people away. But how is, in a world where people are frightened and it's been the opposite way, that we've gone down to the 99 cents app, what advice would you give people on pricing? Just put them up?
No. Pricing is incredibly hard. And in the beginning, we had public prices. But that, as the company develops, you have an indie developer who needs your product, and you have an SAP or IBM or whatever, a big company that needs your product. And they will have much more use for it. They will have a much wider audience. They will find a ton more bugs. They will need more attention, which also tells me that they get more value out of it. They should pay more money. So eventually, in our sector, you move to bespoke pricing. You discuss what features do you need, what platforms do you need, how many applications do you need, what do you use it for, And then you come up with, we have some internal ruling, but eventually come up with a number that allows a one-person shop to license it without going bankrupt, and that allows a large company to license it and know that they get the support they need. And this is incredibly hard, and this is like probably it's an annoying process because people was going to online and just buy it, like on Amazon, but that's just not how you can do software in that segment.
So someone is sat out there right now with a framework. This is anecdotal, it may not be the person there. Got 2 minutes to give them advice. If they were starting today, is it possible to start today, or were you just lucky, and what advice would you give them other than to buy a British water filter?
You can start at any time. I mean, maybe don't do PDF. Advice. I think one of the early mistakes I did is I said yes too often. You know, like the Apple ad was like saying no all the time. I said yes all the time because I got emails and it told me, hey, we need a gallery in PDF. Yes. It has to play videos. Yes. You have to like be able to scroll on it. Yes. Oh, it should also do websites. Yes. Like I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I just built it, and then it piled up features and it went through directions that were really useful for one person, but were incredibly like, oh yeah, it should load 20 megabyte images. Oh, we need tiling in the gallery. Oh yeah, we built it. Whatever. Yeah, we did that, and it served a certain niche of our customers. But what would actually have been smarter is just not say yes right away, but say thank you. We'll consider it, and then write up what are the things that are most needed and what actually makes the most business impact, and then based on that, build features. That's what we do now. But in the early days, it was just like, yes, yes, of course. And I tried to please everyone. It's just not possible. Any product, any app, it's not possible to please everyone. You always have to make compromises.
We have loads of questions. We've just run out of time that we're not going to get to. But you're around all day. People can come and
absolutely
suck you dry of your wisdom and your strength. So this has been the Peter Steinberger story, sponsored by Britas. Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.